Welcome to the deep dive. You've brought us a truly comprehensive assessment of the state of the clerical regime in Iran. And our mission today is to cut right through the noise and just deliver the most critical insights from these sources.
That's exactly right. And we're not just looking at, the day-to-day political stuff here. The sources we have, they define the current situation not merely as a crisis, but specifically as a super crisis.
A super crisis?
Yeah, and it's based on two overwhelming structural problems.
Yeah.
A profound collapse of legitimacy and the severely escalated internal power struggles.
So the goal is to extract the facts, the scale of the crises, the regime's response, which seems pretty desperate, and then analyze the competing strategies for the country's future. It sounds urgent.
It is. We follow the analysis. The system is failing on all fronts at once: social, economic, ideological. The sources, they really pinpoint that the regime now relies solely on brute force to stay in power. Its old social base is just gone.
Okay, let's jump straight into that. The breakdown of legitimacy. The source material is very specific about when this all was cemented. It wasn't a slow drift, was it?
No, not at all. It was a direct consequence of bloody repression after these huge mass uprisings. The sources are clear that the major break between society and the state was forged during the uprisings of 1996 and 98, but it was absolutely cemented by that mass eruption in 1401.
That's 2022 for our listeners, after the death of Masa Amini.
Exactly, and the repression that followed, which the sources allege was ordered directly by Khamenei, it just destroyed any chance of a social contract.
How deep do those events run in the public memory? Do the sources give us any numbers, any metrics for that human cost to show why it's such a scar?
They are extremely detailed, and they use those tragedies as proof that reconciliation is, impossible. We're talking about staggering figures here. In Abba 98, that's November 2019, the sources cite over 1,500 martyrs.
1,500.
And then, during the 1401 uprising, over 750 martyrs. And they get specific. They cite 60 to 68 children, many of them shot directly in the head or face.
And that kind of violence, followed by mass arrests, torture, it just means the system has lost all moral standing. And what's interesting is how the society is now responding politically. The sources say they reject the entire system.
It's a total rejection. They're past the internal debates. For listeners who might not be familiar, this means society rejects both the reformists, the ones who want change from within the system, and the hardline principalists.
So the public view is that they're all just two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. Both camps are seen as complicit in the repression and the corruption.
Now, that social breakdown is obviously amplified by the economy. The analysis then pivots pretty sharply to this financial instability. What are the key metrics that the sources are flagging as just catastrophic?
Well, they call it a financial super crisis. So we're talking about chronic hyperinflation. The currency is constantly losing value, and just widespread unemployment feeding mass poverty.
Right.
And to give you a sense of the scale of the decay, the analysis says they need $300 billion in foreign investment just to get the oil infrastructure working again.
$300 billion just for basic maintenance? That's crippling, and that has to lead directly to the poverty numbers, right?
Absolutely. It's the core of the legitimacy crisis. The sources, they even cite one of the regime's own economists, Hossein Rockfar, and he reportedly admitted that 40% of the population, that 35 million people, are living below the poverty line.
And that's not even counting the most extreme cases.
No. If you add the 4 to 7 million in absolute poverty, you are looking at nearly 60% of the entire country just struggling to survive. Poverty is the great accelerator here.
So poverty is accelerating the illegitimacy, but how do the regime's ideological demands like the mandatory hijab fit into this? The analysis calls it their Achilles heel.
Because it's a visible daily fight. The mandatory hijab is one of the regime's most important symbols of control. And yet, you see widespread public defiance everywhere. Women on motorcycles, defying dress codes at universities. The sources even point to that national slogan that just captures the mood perfectly. Whether with or without hijab, forward to revolution.
Which speaks to that idea in the analysis of there being two societies.
Correct. There's the underground society, which is, the actual majority of people who have turned their back on the system. And then there's the visible society, which is only complying because of the constant threat from security forces. The majority is just waiting.
So if the social foundations are crumbling, let's look inside the system itself. Section 2 of the material covers these self-inflicted wounds, these internal power struggles, starting with a massive ideological erosion. Even their traditional base is walking away.
Yes. The hypocrisy is just too obvious now. The sources highlight a really dramatic statistic. Over 70,000 mosques are reportedly empty.
70,000.
And the regime has tried everything to lure people back, money, food. They're even allowing music in some religious settings, which was forbidden before. But it's not working. The public now sees the clerics and just thinks theft, corruption, violence.
And according to this analysis, this is all tied directly to a major strategic mistake Khamenei made after the '96 uprisings. He tried to unify the government by basically getting rid of all internal opposition.
This is so critical to understanding the chaos now. He removed figures who kept some kind of internal balance. Most notably, Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani. The sources point to his death drowning in a pool as Khamenei's major error. Rafsanjani was a key balancing figure, internally and internationally. By getting rid of him and others, Khamenei pushed his main project forward, which was installing a completely unified young Hezbollah government.
A government symbolized by Ibrahim Raisi.
Right.
Exactly. Raisi was the ultimate loyalist. He's described pretty bluntly in the sources as an illiterate cleric and a killer. But his only value to Khamenei was his total obedience. He was meant to lock down the system for the succession. Which brings us to Raisi's death in that helicopter crash. The analysis claims this just shattered Khamenei's whole dream of a unified dictatorship.
It did, and the public's reaction confirms it was catastrophic for the supreme leader's authority. The public celebrations right after his death, dancing, music, people distributing sweets, that was a profound social defeat for Khamenei.
It proved that the loyalty he was trying to build just didn't exist outside his own hardline bubble.
Right. And now this subsequent attempt to salvage things with the Pezeshkian project, that seems to be sailing just as fast.
It seems to have stalled immediately.
Pezeshkian was brought in to try and re-engage with people, but he's portrayed in the analysis as, well, weak, ineffectual. One analysis bluntly calls him a whiny president who acts more like the opposition than the government.
And the other factions aren't interested in his national consensus.
No, because, as the analysis puts it, they are now wolves tearing each other apart.
That's a powerful image. And what's fueling all this? It's gone beyond fighting over cabinet posts or money.
It's moved to the ultimate prize, the succession. With Khamenei's age and health, the battle for who takes over next is accelerating all the decay. The cracks are becoming public.
And that brings all the infighting out into the open. We see quotes from former top officials just openly attacking the system.
Yes. Former President Rouhani said that laws passed by the current parliament are rotten in spirit when 90% of the people oppose them. You see former security officials like Karoubi questioning the core anti-U.S. policy. Even hardliners like Kolobov admit things have failed and are calling for a new generation. This kind of public division, it just shows the system is in total gridlock. It's eating itself.
So if the political system is self-destructing, what is the core strategy the regime is using to stay alive? Section 3 says it's just massive, bloody suppression.
That's all they have left. It is entirely reliant on maintaining a climate of fear. This means expanding the security forces, the bosige, plainclothes agents, and of course mass executions. And the sources are really clear on this crucial point. Powerful, stable states do not rely on mass executions. It's a sign of profound weakness.
Let's look at those execution numbers because they paint a terrifying picture of that weakness.
The frequency has just exploded. We're talking one execution every 1.5 hours.
Wow.
And that number is probably heavily understated. A UN representative suggested that only about 5% of the actual executions are ever officially reported.
Which means the true scale is enormous. It suggests the whole system, even the judiciary and prisons, must be totally overloaded.
Absolutely. The head of the judiciary, EJE, has reportedly told prosecutors to reduce new cases, to settle things with commitment and repentance letters.
They're running out of room.
They're running out of capacity. The legal and prison systems just can't handle the sheer volume of repression required to keep the lid on.
This brings us to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. The analysis frames them as the system's absolute red line.
The ultimate guarantor. The IRGC is completely loyal to Khamenei. And crucially, it's completely tangled up in the economy. We're talking control of roughly 60% of the state budget. They manage over 22 ports, key infrastructure, the oil trade. All of this massive economic power and the corruption that comes with it is linked directly back to the Supreme Leader's office, the beat.
So no internal faction, even the ones fighting for the succession, would ever dare attack the IRGC?
That's the critical finding of the analysis.
Yeah.
They will never attack the IRGC, because if the IRGC collapses, the whole system just goes with it. Yeah. Instantly.
But even that skeleton has to be feeling the strain. There are reports of lower ranks in the Basij and IRGC being affected by public hatred.
And that internal strain is crucial. The sources report suicides, psychological disorders, members literally surrendering their membership cards during the uprisings. So while the leadership is loyal, the lower ranks, the people embedded in society, they're fracturing.
Which leads directly to the core prediction in the analysis.
That the IRGC's ultimate fate will mirror the Shah's imperial guard.
Disintegration and collapse.
Exactly. Disintegration and rapid collapse when mass pressure is finally applied. All the decay we've talked about, economic, social, it will eventually filter up and make the security apparatus too brittle to survive a major organized push.
So we have a collapsing regime, a society on the edge. Section 4 of the material looks at the competing strategies for the future, starting with the organized resistance.
Right. The analysis focuses on the threat from the organized Mujahideen and their resistance units, and their strategy recognizes something really important. You can't have spontaneous mass demonstrations like in 1979 anymore. The regime's security structure is too complex: drones, encirclement, live fire. So the source material asserts the next uprising has to be driven by an organized army of freedom.
And then there's the other big alternative discussed, the Reza Pahlavi project. The analysis takes a very critical view of this. It calls it a break on the revolution.
That is the source material's viewpoint, yes. The analysis describes Pahlavi as a burned card, and it alleges his project is supported by both the regime's intelligence apparatus and certain foreign colonial circles, using a massive media push. The source claims his key function is to act as a brake on the revolution, and they say the evidence is his public statements trying to reach out to the IRGC and Basij.
The sources also point to a claimed lack of strategic substance.
Right. The analysis stresses he has no real organization on the ground, has never even used the word overthrow, and never names Khamenei directly. It also claims he relies on highly exaggerated PR efforts, like that failed New Covenant signature project.
And the analysis even claims there are ties between his team and the regime's intelligence network.
That's a very serious claim of the source material. It alleges his team includes figures tied directly to the Ministry of Intelligence, and that regime-linked cyber armies are used to promote him while at the same time attacking the organized resistance.
So, in essence, the Pahlavi strategy, according to these sources, is seen as hoping for some kind of foreign military intervention.
Pretty much. Reminiscent of historical events like the 1953 coup path, the materials just reject as viable or having any national support. So you have these two fundamentally different strategies, one focused on internal, organized overthrow, and the other, which the sources claim, is just a distraction that seeks outside help.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've established that the regime is operating from a position of, well, absolute weakness. It's relying entirely on desperate, bloody measures like mass executions to stay afloat.
The core takeaway is that the dictatorship is stuck in a trap. It can't escape. It can't maintain internal balance anymore. The infighting is too severe. And it can't fully suppress the revolutionary potential without completely overloading its own system. The analysis holds that the ultimate collapse, when it comes, will be fast. A rapid structural fall, very similar to what happened to the Shah's regime.
And the future of the regime hinges entirely on the fate of the IRGC. So given this detailed account of the IRGC's deep economic entanglement and its role as the system's red line, what critical indicators would signal that its collapse is truly imminent, that it's mirroring the final disintegrating days of the Shah's imperial guard? That is the question you need to explore as this crisis continues to unfold.